Hi, I'm Joel Richardson, and this is The Underground. Welcome to this week's episode of The Underground, a program that explores the testimony of the biblical prophets, the gospel of Jesus Christ, current events, and how all of these things relate to you and me. Now, in this week's episode, we are again on a field trip. We're here right now in front of one of the largest Yazidi refugee camps just outside of Mosul Dam here in northern Iraq. And we're going to talk this week about a new project that we're just beginning to launch. Now, the past few days, we've been traveling around meeting with different regional leaders, getting permission, laying groundwork, asking questions for a project that we are looking at establishing here the next few months and years in light of the absolutely incredible crisis that has unfolded and will continue to we'll feel the ramifications of over the next few years. So Mike, we got Mike Reynolds. Mike, why don't you go ahead and just jump in, lay the groundwork, lay the framework for the project that I've just introduced.
Excellent. So we are, like Joel said, we're here in northern Iraq. There's one of the greatest humanitarian crises in world history. There's about 4 million internally displaced people in Iraq. So you have an enormous refugee crisis where they're fleeing the Anbar province in the Nineveh Plains where Mosul is. And they're fleeing north. They're trying to flee into Syria. They're trying to flee into other Arab states. But what's practically happening is that the Kurdish autonomous region is absorbing the brunt of it. So that creates an enormous medical need. That there's already an economic lull in the Kurdish region, and it's causing doctors to not receive their paychecks. It's causing people who would be working in the hospitals, who would be working in medical clinics, to not have the funds to continue doing so. They're having to give more and more time to private labor outside of the medical field. So one of the first thing we're hoping to do in our town, the town that we're living in now, is to build a mobile clinic that's able to serve the impoverished and the refugee community in our city. The aim is that we would be able to work in the private hours, in the private sector hours, which is about 3 p.m. to 8 p.m., and to be able to serve, to be able to fill that gap, that during that time of day it's very difficult for people to get medical care, emergency care, whether it's trauma care or whether it's a less severe thing, that there's just a gaping hole. The second thing is to do CME medical education. A lot of the doctors have graduated a long time ago and they've had no continued medical education. So there's a great need in them being able to learn the new developments in medicine, to be able to learn new developments in their particular fields. So we are working with a host of doctors to be able to bring them over and to be able to lecture and have the lectures translated and have the lectures distributed by video and audio, so that we're able to work together, work in partnership with the doctors that are already here on the ground and providing extra training and additional training to supplement what they already have. And the third thing, the thing that is the most critical need, is working with Peshmerga soldiers. So currently, there's a large amount of soldiers that when they're wounded, they don't get immediate pre-hospital care. They have anywhere from a 1 hour to 4 hour round-trip drive for them to get care. That's an ambulance leaving, driving an hour, picking them up, and then driving them back an hour. And that's in a good case. That's in a good situation. So what we're hoping to do is to bring paramedics, to bring medical professionals, to bring doctors, to basically build stations on the front lines that will be able to respond immediately when there's an injury. The hope is that we'd be able to provide advanced life support and pre-hospital care, that we would be able to transport wounded soldiers in such a way that they're receiving care on the way, and would get them there quickly. There's also a problem with the number of medics, that they have a very, very small number of medics covering a very large number of soldiers. And so it's very difficult. It's impossible to be able to tend to multiple areas, multiple injuries, multiple events at the same time. That's led to a really high casualty rate, and most of the casualties were totally preventable if there would have been legitimate pre-hospital care. So those are the three things we're working on: is building a clinic that will serve the impoverished and the refugees in our city, building a continued medical education program that will partner with the doctors and the medics and the medical professionals in our area, in our region, and also building a front lines first response team that would be able to serve and work with the Peshmerga, work in conjunction with their fight against ISIS to help them when they're wounded, to get them the care that they need, and to hopefully dramatically reduce the 90-something% casualty rate that is preventable.
Right. So let me just, I'm going to back up a little bit and again just sort of reframe everything just to contextualize this. Today, right now, we're 2 days past 9/11. All of the news reports say that it's within the next several weeks. We don't know. By the time that this program airs, they're saying that the offensive to liberate the city of Mosul is imminent. And so all of the American military spokesmen and the Iraqi government and so forth is saying that the liberation of the city of Mosul from ISIS is imminent. Now, if that happens, they're speculating that there could be as many as 1.2 million people that will be fleeing the city again into the Kurdish north, this sort of Kurdish autonomous north, which presently, Dalton, how many people live here in the north right now?
Well, the numbers are really mixed. Depending on who you ask, it's very different. And honestly, I don't think people really know, because what we're dealing with is a mass displaced people's crisis, not just from, because we're not dealing with just ISIS from the last 2 years. We're dealing with the Iraq War from the invasion in 2003. We're dealing with the Saddam Hussein. We're dealing with the Iraq-Iran wars. We're dealing with decades of displacement. For example, in the town that we live, roughly 60 to 90%, depending on how you count, of the people who live in that city are refugees from decades gone by. So almost our entire city is all refugees who've now resettled and restarted families, or restarted life with their families in this place. So the numbers are mixed, and honestly, I don't even have confidence to say what those numbers are. But roughly about 3 million is the technical population of Kurdistan proper. And you may be watching this, you may not even know what Kurdistan was. I didn't know what Kurdistan was. Kurdistan is the northern part of Iraq. So when we invaded when the U.S. invaded in 2003 and we ousted Saddam Hussein, the intention was to create a unity government where Sunnis, Shiites, and Kurds would function in a democratic, unified government together. Reality and problem is that didn't happen. So today, the North Kurdistan is blocked from resources, from pay, from support from the Baghdad, largely Shiite government. And then you have the Sunni Shiite clash, which really ISIS is part of this bigger picture of the Sunni Shiite clash. So that Kurdistan finds itself in a unique historical juncture right now in light of this ongoing displacement crisis because of this.
So, just real simply, let's just say we've got 3 million here in Kurdistan, in Iraqi Kurdistan. If all of a sudden another million pour in, you've just multiplied the population. And so the Kurds are the primary group right now that have been fighting ISIS.
Yeah.
Everybody back home, we know ISIS, they're bad guys. We would like to see them defeated. The Kurdish people, I know this is a very complicated situation. The Kurdish people are the primary group that are fighting ISIS. Now, they are already bearing the financial and just practical burden of housing, roughly 1 million refugees or so.
Yep.
And now they're talking about a potential another million. And so the point that I want to convey here is, one, this is a people who need help.
Yep.
Two, the opportunity is absolutely immense. Now, even if Mosul doesn't fall imminently and there's not another million refugees, the need, the opportunity right now, if you have a heart to serve, if you're a believer, you want to follow the model of Jesus and serve those that are absolutely broken, crushed, needy, afflicted, forgotten, literally who have just lived through a genocide, then there is absolutely unlimited opportunity right in front of us. So I want to jump back, Mike. I want you to hit a little bit more on this issue of serving the Peshmerga, because here you have an army which is largely civilian soldiers. They're just rotating out of the population. And I know we don't want to give exact numbers, but let's just say you're dealing with 100,000 soldiers. We're dealing with literally a few doctors. And so if you're someone who is medically trained, or you're simply trained as a medic, basically we're in the process of establishing this program whereby people could come and plug in. They could serve for short term, they could serve long term. Obviously long term is always better, but just focus in on that a bit and talk about what that probably will look like. And if someone was to come and say, I've got a medical degree, I've got the freedom, I've got the heart and the passion to do it, what would it probably look like if they're coming? Because and this is serving on the front lines in this ongoing clash between the Kurds and ISIS.
So we're the channels of communication are open between us and the Peshmerga for us to be able to hear from them when there's a greater need. So when there is an offensive mission, when there is a push to take back territory from ISIS, what it would look like is that they would be able to communicate that with us, and we would be able to mobilize our team to the front lines. And front lines sounds kind of ambiguous. There's some of our neighbors who are Peshmerga, they'll show us pictures from the front lines where there's an ISIS camp that's only maybe 500 meters away. It looks like you could kick a ball into it. And then, I have other neighbors who are firing, big howitzers from 10 kilometers away. So there is a little bit of ambiguity to it, but what it is basically is it's the border between Kurdish territory and what would be considered Arab Iraqi territory. So there's an 1,100 kilometer, it's 600 miles of Kurdish border that is being defended by Peshmerga, and that is simply to keep ISIS from advancing north. They take offensive missions south to take back territory from ISIS. So what it looks like practically is that we camp with the Peshmerga. We spend, whether it's 3 days, 5 days, 7 days with the Peshmerga during the offensive campaigns, and we be a presence behind them. That we are able to bring their people back up to what's the designated front line, and then to be able to give them care and to be able to get them transported if their condition is more serious. So, and
not non-combat. So this isn't Christian militia bearing arms with Peshmerga in the fight.
Yeah.
This is not that. There's some groups who are doing that. That's not our mandate or what we're doing. So this is relief, medical service to those who are being wounded and who are dying on the front lines because of engagement in battle.
So let me do this. Now, what level of training would somebody need if they were interested in doing this? What do they need before they come here?
It's kind of funny. The basic requirements that we would have as an organization, if somebody was coming saying we have absolutely nothing, we'd say go and take an EMT course and take a tactical casualty combat care course. So those are the bare bones minimum. We are working with physician's assistants and other doctors to be able to give managerial oversight to that project, but that's the bare minimum. So at least as far as serving on the front line is concerned. And to add to what Dalton said, I think to kind of put it in context a little bit, this idea came, my wife and I's neighbors are all Peshmerga on every side. So when we go over to our neighbors' houses for dinner, when we are spending time with them, they're always showing us pictures on their phones from the front lines. They're just swiping picture after picture after picture, showing us whether they're firing, like I said, howitzers, or whether they're right up close in the fight, or they're at Shingal. It's kind of a wild experience to be sitting next to them and have them showing us pictures from the front. And so the idea came from, how do we love these neighbors? How do we show them that we're here with them, that we're joining them in solidarity, but not just in word. Everybody supports the Peshmerga in Kurdistan. Everybody loves the Peshmerga, but there's not presently a youth movement. There's a lot of people in the Middle East like watching war on TV. They don't like being a part of it. And so there's this this enduring issue of how do we lead by example? How do we set good precedent? And I think this has been an answer from God of how do we love our neighbors? It's like, well, there's nothing wrong ethically, morally. There's not a combat mission. It's not us, like Dalton said, picking up guns and going and fighting alongside of our neighbors. It's us being there for when our neighbors are injured, that we're able to work with them to keep them from dying, or to keep them from other life-altering issues. So,
right. Yeah. So let me do this now. So we've got the larger relief program that's in the process of being developed. This serving the Peshmerga, that's one arm of what you guys are establishing and looking to establish. What would be some of the other branches that you're looking at?
So beyond serving the Peshmerga, we want to be able to work regionally. We want to be able to work with our neighbors from our city. We also want to be able to work with the Peshmerga from our region. But the offensive pushes are not happening 24/7. Those aren't a constant thing, and so we want to be able to have a medical presence in our city. To be able to be seeing people, on the day in and day out, whether it's working to get medication to people with heart problems or diabetes, we want to be able to work with them on the day-to-day. So that's where the medical clinic comes in, is being able to set up a medical clinic on somewhat neutral property that would be able to serve a variety of different tribes, a variety of different needs, whether they be refugees or simply impoverished people in our city.
I think as well, to jump in on that point, because we're talking about Mosul, like right behind us is the Lake Mosul. This camp behind us here, 18,000 people. The camp behind that one, 75,000 people. I mean, these are massive humanitarian crises. And so the issue is, regardless of when Mosul falls, these people can't go back to their homes, because their homes are, some of them ISIS is uncapping oil wells, flooding the town, lighting it on fire, burning it to the ground. Some of these places are littered with landmines, like in Shingal, so they can't go back. So this is going to, the humanitarian displacement crisis is going to be going on for decades. It's probably not going to be this generation that gets to return to their home in many cases. But beyond that, even when ISIS, this Mosul crisis is over, I mean, we've got Iran just over here. We've got Turkey up here. We've got Arab conflict in the south. We've got Syria over there. My point is this, is that even if Mosul gets nicely resolved quickly, and I don't think it will, we're still dealing with a long-term issue of engaging military conflict to serve human misery in the midst of ongoing regional military conflict, literally on all sides. So for us, this is a long-term engagement thing. It's not just to serve the issue of Mosul in the immediate, which we have urgency to do, but this is kind of training grounds for a long-term, to work for decades, should the Lord tarry, to serve in a meaningful, ongoing way in the region for many people groups in many military conflicts.
Yeah, I mean, just observing just the past few days with this particular visit, there is a absolutely profound historical moment, this window that we're in. And again, as Dalton said, this could continue on for the next decade plus. We were just at an event where there were a group of older Yazidi women that were coming to a community center. They were giving them gifts. They were giving them some new clothes. Obviously, they're living in the refugee camps, and some special gifts. And as I'm looking at these women, I'm thinking just a few years ago, because I mean ISIS is just now a little over 2 years ago. Just 2 years ago, the Yazidi people group, of which there are, I forget the numbers, several 100,000 globally speaking, and maybe 400,000 or so here in northern Iraq. These were a people who were considered unreached. They didn't have any contact, any significant contact with Christians. Now, in light of the crisis that's broken open, all of a sudden, their whole world has changed. But it's changed the landscape of it. And so now there's this opportunity right in front of us to love and to share the gospel, to love on people who just a few years ago it was again categorized as completely unreached, untouched peoples. So the opportunity here, again, we can't emphasize enough until you come and see it. It's endless. It's absolutely endless. Now let me do this too, as folks are watching this, because we know it's hard to sort of connect back home with what we're talking about here. Let's just say someone comes, Dalton. They go, where would I live? What's that going to look like?
Well, to get very specific, with September now, within the next 2 months, and this is where if you're watching this, you may be able to get involved immediately. We need to raise about $50,000 immediately over the next few weeks to secure housing on the front line for doctors who will be coming internationally, for vehicles to transport them. I mean, this is to establish, we have a base of operations in a town here in Northern Iraq, but what we really need is more accommodation and transportation closer to the front lines. And so that's our immediate need. What if you're a doctor, if you're a medical professional in various degrees of specialized medicine or treatment, you would fly into Erbil. We'd transport you to our base of operations on the front lines, which would have access to the breadth of the front line, which it's very long. What is it, 11,000?
It's 1,100 kilometers.
1,100 kilometers. It's quite a large front. And so what we would do is basically respond to Peshmerga requests of where they need help in light of different needs and offensives. So in the immediate, we need finances and we need people. For those who you may have finances, you can go to faimission.org, and on the donate page you can give and it'll be put to immediate use. If you are a professional with skills and you come, we will have a house for you and we will have transportation for you. And we'll have specifics that we can communicate on a private level, not in this public context of details of what that would actually look like. But accommodation and transportation we would provide, and then the on-ramps for you to engage pretty much immediately in a service capacity.
Yeah, and just for clarity, you wouldn't come and live in a hut or tent, or a shack.
Yeah.
I mean, there's legitimate, it's many of the modern Western conveniences that you're used to are accessible.
We've got families. I've got a wife and 4 sons. Mike has 2 daughters. We're here with our families. It's not something that we're always on edge, wondering if we're going to die. There is stability behind the lines. So I want to be clear about that. This is not something that you're engaging in. There's relative stability in the midst of everything going on.
You can come and actually live your life here and have a family. You can bring your family. And you're not, you're actually able to live a relatively normal life. Now, let's just do this because you're saying ideally within the next few weeks you'd love to raise $50,000. That's for housing. That's also for vehicles. Talk about the vehicle, Mike, because I heard one of our translators mention the fact that they essentially have one ambulance. Do I have that right?
Yeah, so on the day-to-day, they have one ambulance. Just a few days ago, one of the outposts that we visited was hit by a mortar, and it killed 2 men. And it wasn't during an offensive push, and so there was no medical presence. So the one ambulance that they had that was available had to drive. I'm not totally sure how long it was, but I got the idea. I think it was about an hour. They had to drive an hour to come get them, and on the way to the hospital, the 2 soldiers died. So there's this issue of not only do they only have one ambulance when things are calm, when things really step up, they actually only have 11 ambulances to cover the need. So there's just a gaping hole there. So even by throwing in 1 vehicle or 2 more vehicles or 3 more vehicles, we increase what they have by 10, 20, or 30%. It's a pretty amazing opportunity. By adding a few doctors to the front, by adding a few doctors to the front lines, we're able to dramatically increase, and in some situations double and triple and quadruple the medical staff that they have on hand.
Long term, our projected budget is a lot more significant, but in light of the Mosul offensive over the next few weeks, we would like to land additional housing, additional transportation to begin a constant, immediate rotation of medical professionals, as in yesterday.
Right. One of the things also that got me when I was listening to the translator yesterday is he looked at us and he said, all these Christian groups, they come to the camps, they come and they visit and sort of do tourism. They bring blankets, they bring, things like that. They take pictures and they leave. And, again, everyone is familiar with what happened with ISIS. Everyone's familiar that there's a massive mess here, that there's tremendous opportunity here. But then the years go on and they forget about it. And again, when Mosul falls, that's going to be huge. That's going to bring people's attention back to this again. But we cannot emphasize enough that this moment, this opportunity, this crisis, literally the largest humanitarian crisis in terms of just raw numbers. Do I have that right, in human history?
Well, as of last year, the UN declared it was the largest, and it's going to get more between the Syrian civil war and the rise of ISIS. So the two things combined produced the largest displacement of peoples in human history that surpassed World War II and the Holocaust, which is just staggering when you think about it.
Yeah. And so, of course, it's not to say that there are not Christian ministries, that there are not folks that are not here doing things long term. Of course there are. But we just want to communicate the need, the urgency. And if the Lord is drawing your heart, if the Lord's touching your heart and saying, is this something I could actually do? The answer is yes, you can do it. It's doable, it's livable, and again, the opportunity is vast and endless, and it will be so for the next decade plus. And so, we're here calling out and reaching out for help in every way possible. So again, Dalton, just give the information in terms of if folks want more information, who do they send an email to, where do they go, and how do they connect?
Right. Well, first, I would say go to faimission.org, find out about more of who we are, our ethos, and what we care about, to know what you'd be supporting. It's all there. Our films are there. Our articles are there. Our values are there. As well, there's a donate page where you can donate immediately. We are a U.S. 501c3, so you can give tax-deductible donations, and we will have individuals carry that over for us over in the next few weeks because we have a rotation of medical teams beginning. So it's rather urgent. I just do want to stress that if you give today, it will literally be carried over in the next few weeks and be put to immediate use. So faimission.org, and then if you want to email us as well at contact@faimission.org, we can share more information on a private level. For example, if you're wanting to know more details about large donations, or you're wanting to know details about how to bring a group or a team over, or you want more information on that level, email us at contact@faimission.org, and we can put the links below this video.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything else you guys want to wrap up? Just anything else that you didn't hit that you want to touch on?
I only want to add to this idea that this isn't for the long haul. I think it's simple to look at these kind of projects and to think, what can I do? What can I do in a week? Well, we have a plan that's set up to accommodate people who can only come a week at a time. We have a long-term plan that's designed to accommodate the professional doctor in the States who's only able to come for a week or 10 days, and who's only able to come maybe a couple times a year. We can plan, and we can get you put into a really, really effective place in even only a week, where we'll be able to provide translators, we'll be able to provide equipment, we'll be able to have all of those needs covered, and you're able as a skilled individual to come and to work alongside some of the best people on the planet, and to be serving in something that's everlastingly meaningful, that we have a unique opportunity to serve alongside of our neighbors. And the end goal isn't that they get their bodies fixed up. The end goal is that they're able to hear the gospel from people that love them and people that they trust. And so this is what I think is an incredible opportunity to build massive amounts of rapport and trust with the neighbors that we love so dearly.
Yeah, and I would just give a few closing speculative remarks about the liberation of Mosul, because right now the region is on edge. I think from the West we could celebrate, yay, the liberation of Mosul. But reality is the liberation of Mosul is going to bring with it a whole bunch of challenges and complications that right now don't exist, because right now it's a holding pattern. Meaning Mosul is on lockdown. The only way out really is to head towards Raqqa. They're not advancing this way. And so basically when all this changes, there's going to be collision politically, geopolitically, economically, militarily between Sunni, Shiites, Kurds, Peshmerga, Yazidis. Who's going to control this area? Who's going to control that? He who took this land, are they going to give it back? It has potential to actually escalate the regional conflict. And I know that may sound bizarre, but we're praying that the Lord restrains violence, but there's a very real possibility that the liberation of Mosul could actually have more dire ramifications for the region than the holding pattern and this war of attrition with Mosul, which is currently just kind of keeping things relatively stable, which sounds weird when you see it on the news and you see like, oh, this just needs to end. Well, if it ends, it's going to, the Middle East is a vacuum. So, you take, it's complex. So I think we really do, we need endurance. We need a long-term mentality.
Amen. So let me just end by saying this. Those of you who are followers of Jesus, the question that I've been asking myself recently, as I said, if Jesus was alive and here on the earth right now, walking and ministering, where would he probably be? And I know we could make arguments, well, of course he would be in Israel, or he would be here, or he'd be there. I have a very strong suspicion that if we are right now smack dab in the middle of the largest humanitarian crisis in human history, that there's a pretty solid chance that Jesus himself would be here in Iraq or in Syria. And so we just want to leave you with this question. As followers of Jesus, if we are truly looking, if our eyes are fixed on Jesus and we're trying to follow him, where is he leading us? Where is he leading you? So we'll leave you with that. That's all the time that we have for this week. I want to thank you so much for being with us. Look forward to seeing you next week. I'm Joel Richardson, and this is The Underground.